Okay, Bobby, let's see if we give this a shot for explanations. What we have, of course, is a sun, distant, not to scale, but it is above the atmosphere or the Kármán line. We would have the centralized portion from the sun, a ray that is specific, that will yield the perceived path of light between the sun and the observer, who is going to be somewhere on the Earth's surface. We have the spot, the hot spot on the lead edge, where the ray is going to hit the first boundary. That's the Kármán line. We have the index of optical refraction of 1, which I think is the vacuum of space, progressing denser into our atmosphere with height. Kármán line down to the surface of the Earth. Now on this model, we would anticipate that the sun, everything is in motion relative to this goalpost here, which would be the observer. To move all of that in AutoCAD is going to be much more confusing than just saying it's the same thing as saying that we are moving the goalpost. That's the location of the individual. Now, when we start moving the line in relation to the atmosphere, or to the sun's position and the path through the atmosphere, when in reality, like I said, the sun is moving towards the observer. The distance in between is just a relative way of looking at it. We would have a post where the individual is outside, and the blue line represents the Earth's surface, is outside the environment. So the sun itself, the direct path which is creating the hot spot as it enters the atmosphere, and its termination point where we're seeing it right here, coming out of the density gradient, the acrylic block, which is how this is represented, is outside or well in front of distance from where the observer is. The observer can be higher. They'll see further to see where that point is relative to what it appears to be. Now, as we move the goalpost closer, we hit this spot right here. This spot is where the central band between the red hues and the blue hues that we see separating due to refraction is where the center point of the hot spot, the culminated beams. I mean, this is the closest that everything gets to all energy being one beam and being that hot spot that we recognize as the color. That would be a moment of sunrise. And as we progress further into it, the location where the red line crosses that greenish path gets higher and higher and higher and higher until we reach a point in the day where the path, the refraction is less relevant. You know, all we're talking about this extreme edges of, you know, sunrise and sunset is that the sun is at a point where it's either going to interact with the Kármán line and it's going to refract down through it, or based on Fresnel's total internal reflection, it is going to bounce off and back out into space, at which point none of the light is making it through. So that is the premise behind this concept. So we have the sun, where you perceive the sun to manifest is less relevant than what the sun is actually doing. Where the sun is, how the light is breaking down. We have, of course, as we move this red line in, and let me move that again, zoomed in, as we approach this area, the first lights we are seeing, the lights of the morning, are going to be those red hues. That is what comes to us first. And after that, we transition into the full spectrum of the day. things get brighter. We have the full white light, red, green, and blue. When you have a RGB light strand, when all colors are turned to the max, that's white light based on the RGB. So again, I mean, there's videos from, I would have to see if it's still on my channel, about man's recreation inside of a room for the full light spectrum of daylight to artificially illuminate a room. And some other things to consider in that presentation, which I'll try to link to you, is that once you have a culminated energy source, its size is pinned at infinity. That means regardless of distance, it maintains the same apparent size. Does not have to get smaller with distance or increase in size up close. When it is exposed to a refractionary environment going into our atmosphere, that can all change. But these are things to think about as far as the arguments of why doesn't the sun get smaller? Well, it's a culminated beam and its size is pinned at infinity. This is reproducible on the surface scientifically. There are methods to do so. So overall in this concept as I've presented to you, it does not go against anything that is proven scientifically. In fact, it goes hand in hand with a lot of concepts. The end result is that the interpretation of the data is interpreted differently. Which is right, which is wrong? Well, there continues the battle. But this concept does not go against science at all.